next speaker is lined up and ready to go, and that is Giancarlo Di Vece. I hope I did your name justice, Giancarlo. Giancarlo is CEO of Unosquare, and he's going to talk to us today about how technology leaders can drive success with Belfast talent. So something Unosquare has first-hand experience with. They're a Washington-based software engineering company. They opened offices here 3 years ago, and they recently moved to Mays Chambers. They're set to surpass the 100 jobs that they pledged to create in Belfast when they first opened operations here. So we're absolutely delighted. I know Giancarlo is in Mexico mostly, in the US, and here 10 weeks of the year. So we're delighted to have you, Giancarlo. Please welcome him to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I do have the presentation right there, so that's good. Yeah, I was looking for you. So I'll explain a little bit to everybody what we do, so we can give a little bit of a background and get into the talk a little bit easier. So, yeah, I was looking for my presentation in the back, but it's not there. So we have about 600 employees globally. We have operations in the US, we have operations in Mexico, and we started operations here about 3 years ago. As a company, we have existed for about 10 years now, and here in Northern Ireland, of course, for 3 years. What we do is distributed software engineering services, and for healthcare, for financial services companies, and for high-tech companies. So that's a little bit of a background into what we do. And what I'm here to talk about is how can we, in the private sector, integrate to be a little bit more communicated into how we're driving Belfast success in technology. So I don't know that I have a clicker. Yes? Yes, I do, I guess, yes. So it starts a little bit with the first time I visited Belfast. So to give you a little bit of background on that, we started a search for a new country where we could operate about 5 years ago. We visited 6 different countries. We visited the South, and we visited here. And in the South, we visited about 4 different cities. And then Belfast was going to be, I was invited by Invest and one of our clients told us, like, you should go see Northern Ireland, and Belfast was a little bit of an afterthought at that point. So we said, okay, we'll go for a day, me and my brother. We'll go for a day, we'll figure out if it's a good place to, start a business, and we'll just see it. And so what happened there was actually very interesting. We weren't sure about opening up in the cities that we had visited in the South. And so one of them was Dundalk, the other one was Athlone. We visited Galway, beautiful cities, but just a talent pool and the setup for the tech environment wasn't really what we were expecting. And so when we got here, it was late at night. We drove right into the city hall, and when we opened our eyes, it was the last days of December, and it was Christmas lights all over. And so it was a really beautiful welcome. And then, of course, by recommendation of Invest and we stayed at the Merchant, beautiful hotel. So everything was kind of perfect. And then the next day, they set up about 10 interviews for Mario and I. Mario's my brother. And there we met Mark, who would become our site lead. And so Mario told me, we interviewed 10 people, and Mario being the technical person between the two of us, Mario told me, look, I don't know if we're going to open here, but at least we absolutely need to have Mark in the company. And then I would probably hire about 7 of the 10 people that I interviewed, which is a huge number compared to what it takes for us to hire in Mexico, right? So in Mexico, it takes about 30 to 50 interviews to find about 5 or 7 people, so the same amount. So the ratios are very different. Of course, population ratios are also very different, and that's why it's important to talk about those things here. In the last 3 years that we've been here, there's been about 900 startups created, which have driven population growth to about 4%, which globally is a big number. but for Europe is a monster amount. Like it's a huge number for Europe, right? And so it is definitely growing in a good way. Yeah, okay, I'm very confused by the, yeah. This to say, we are, the tech space in Belfast is growing very, very aggressively, is what I would say. So I think in the private sector, again, we have to be very careful with all the companies coming in from America, from the rest of Europe, from the UK. It's important that we are together, that we communicate those things, and we kind of sit around and say, like, how can we make this setup better? How can we get Belfast ready for that explosion and manage that explosion? And I'll talk about why in a second. So since we've been here, this is what has happened, right? So 40 coding groups. There was very little around modern JavaScript technologies when we got here. There was very little around mobile. And even though talent is scarce right now, there's a lot of those technologies that are already in place. And so a lot of people have started using that. So again, I talked about the startups already, so I'll just jump that through. Belfast is a hub for international companies. We've seen that. Some of those companies paved the way about 10 years ago. Allstate being one of them, Citigroup being another one of them. And they bet in Belfast for a long time, for long term, for stable reasons. And they were fantastic at doing that. Ourselves, 3 years into this, what started as an experiment a little bit, now we have said, okay, we're setting up in Belfast. We're setting up in Belfast for the long term. And we have actually acquired a lease for Mace Chambers for 10 years now. So our growth is not only going to be limited now to 100 people, which was what we thought originally. Now we're trying to expand way further into Belfast. And there's a lot of reasons for companies to set up here. I've seen a lot of American companies that are setting up here in the last few years. And obviously, cultural fit is great. Communication is easy. Getting here is easy. So there's a lot of reasons that facilitate companies setting up here in Belfast. The financial incentives from Invest and I are good. They're comparable to the South, and they're comparable to Europe. We don't really have those in America. Those in America are very limited, and so that's also an interesting thing on why Invest and I is having such a success bringing American companies as well. We also like to drink Mexican cerveza in the office, so that's also another reason why to set up here. There's a highly skilled talent pool in our visit. In our first visit 3 years ago, we went to the two different universities that are here, and that was really a fantastic exposure into the level of education that companies get here, that the companies can achieve with the people here. So we have a lot of people, most of our people, from Queens or Ulster. And, again, the education level is really, really good. But as the city grows, we are competing for talent, right? So every company that comes here, the talent pool is not necessarily getting any bigger. So as the city grows, we're competing for the same exact talent. And how can we, as a group of companies that are successful in this space, get together into making this a better scenario for the city, a better long-term scenario for the city? I have found that in the last 3 years, salaries have gone up about 50% from when we started, and what Invest and I told us, salaries have gone up 50% in the last 3 years. Now, that's a great thing. It means that the economy here is booming. It means that there's a lot of opportunity to be here and to continue growing here. But it also means that there's a lot of inequality. It starts to create a quick, big gap in the dispersion of wealth, right? And so I believe that it's our responsibility as investors that have come here to this city. I believe it's our responsibility to talk about these things, to make sure that we leave a long-term, stable, prosperous city for everybody that is here. So I'm saying it looks a lot like the cities that we're used to in America, right? So it looks a lot like San Francisco, it looks a lot like Portland, it looks a lot like Seattle, especially like Portland. The weather is the exact same, which is pretty bad, but that's, yeah. And so it's interesting how in those economies, they're way bigger economies than Belfast, but it's interesting how those economies have had the exact same issue. The dispersion and the distribution of wealth has been a little bit affected, or significantly affected, by tech companies, especially in this economic boom, right? And so what we want to control, or what we want to say and start talking about with the rest of the tech sector here is, how can we attack that? How can we make sure that the rest of the economy is included in this success? And then here we have another problem, which is Brexit. We don't know what's going to happen. Pro-Brexit or anti-Brexit is the same. I don't have a stance on it. It's just, we just don't know what's going to happen. And when we don't know what's going to happen, that brings uncertainty. So we have that wealth distribution gap now that is starting to be created in the last 5 years, and now we have an uncertainty added to it, where we don't know if we're going to be able to continue having those educational programs, or we're going to be able to continue having foreigners to come here and invest, work, etc. So I believe we need a talent solution that enables all businesses in the city and all people in the city to be successful. That's really the main vision that drives Unosquare, and what I'm here to talk about is how can we share a little bit of that vision more broadly with the tech sector. So the solution that I'm proposing is, well, I'll go through each one of them a little bit more in depth, but create a vision for the people that you're working with. So we've hired about 60 people so far, and the vision of the company is to develop the economy through services economies, right? So I think Belfast has gone from tier 2 in the last 25 years to tier 3, which is services. So from manufacturing, moving a little bit into, or little by little, into services. And I think that's very powerful. If properly configured in the economy, I think that is very powerful. And so what I have seen is that I saw a lot of people here, out of our 60 people, that have like really big hearts. They have a lot of intention into making sure that the city is a long-term sustainable place. And so I think that's what we can use. It's a small city, so a lot of people know each other. And if we all share a vision within the tech sector, then we can include other parts of the economy, and we can get better in our own sector. So my recommendation for companies is identify a purpose that's bigger than just a single person for your day-to-day work, because that's going to make you want to wake up in the morning. It's going to make you want to go to work. It's going to make you want to apply those things into a better future for your community. And then think broadly about diversity, right? What I've seen in this city is not super diverse. I think you guys are trying, and I think that's the first step, of course. But can we be a little bit more diverse? Can we bring, more people from outside to create that stronger rope, that different mindset, those added ideas into the economy? And I think that's very powerful. We went through the process. We have 3 people from Mexico here in the office, and we went through the process with the government here to bring those folks. And it was a little bit sad to me to see that it was a very difficult process. And I think we're in a situation where Belfast is growing at a rate where we can sustain it with able workers from other places in the world. And so it was a little bit disappointing, but I think it's something that we can work on together in the tech sector and push the government to make it easier. Then enabling trust in your vision. What does this mean? So it means that, can we create a trusting team? Can we have a team where we can make mistakes? Can we have a team where we can, in sharing the vision, be autonomous, behave our own way, and being able to purposefully go after that vision that we're trying to get? I think salaries in the industry are just being a way, there are a way to recruit fast, But are those things really powerful to the community? Are those things really powerful if operated, without any respect for a vision, without any respect for how to build a better economy, how to build a better community for Belfast? I think it's something that, as companies, we need to look deeply into. And then create a culture that enables trust. And what I mean by this is that obviously salaries are going up because there's a scarcity in the space, right? So there's scarcity in engineering talent that we can all find. So can we enable a culture that creates trust for those people, to train more people, to mentor more people, to share that vision of the company, to share that vision of the sector, to share a vision of what we want in Belfast in the next 10 or 15 years? I think so. At least is what we're trying in our company. Have the courage to build strong local relationships. What does this mean? It's very, very important. And we are competitors. We are competitors in the sense that we're going for the same talent. So sometimes it takes a little bit of, not a little bit, it takes a lot of courage to share that information with your competitors, right? So can you share the challenges that you're having in recruiting? Can you share the challenge that you're having in management? Can you share the technology problems that you're having in your own company? And it gets a little bit difficult to share those things with competitors. But I think it's very necessary for us to kind of be able to create a vision for the city that we want to see in 10 years or 15 years, and then discuss it openly. And so I am proposing, I know Allstate has created something similar to this. But what I'm proposing here, the action item that I'm proposing here, is that we actually get together, that we actually focus on getting those challenges discussed and in an open table and just talk about them freely. And then meet people face to face, right? I have a lot of peers, entrepreneurs that have opened companies here, or that are the CIOs or COOs for different American companies that have relative knowledge of Belfast. They have only been here once when they opened and they stopped coming, right? So it's important to embed ourselves in the community. I'm here at least 10 weeks a year. I try to come here every 3 months. And so I think that's made it a little bit different to what most companies are doing. And then the last thing is, as Invest in I is giving us, am I okay with time? Yeah, okay. As Invest in I is promoting the growth of the city, I think it's important that we also include the non-tech workers in the economy. I think it's also important that companies that are getting some funding, we also include a way to build a equality for people that are in the non-tech world. Because, I mean, everybody needs the services of all types of people, right? Of all types of different professions. And I think creating that disparity in the wealth and in the salaries is gonna have a difficult impact in the foreseeable future, right? It's gonna have a difficult impact in the next 10 or 15 years. So I think it's our job as private sectors, but it's also the job of the government to push a little bit programs where, and I know you have Belfast Met, and I know you have, a lot of positive things and a lot of positive organizations that are trying to do this, but I think it wouldn't be bad to force a little bit of it into the companies that are coming to invest here. And then, this obviously generates demand for non-tech careers, which we all need in every single company. And then it reduces the equality gap, which is what I'm talking about, between tech and non-tech workers. So I think Belfast is ripe to really moderate and control how it decides to grow in the next 15 years. To be a city where, we try to level off the wealth disparity. We try to fight for equality. We try to fight for well-being for all its citizens, and instead of having the problems that we have seen in America. So that's a thought that I wanted to share with you today.